So let's talk about quick closings. We're seeing a lot of this in the market right now. It happens every time we're in a tight seller's market, and it's a great time to be in this business when the market's so hot. I know it has its challenges, and quick closings are one of those that I think people are kind of forgetting about all the moving parts that make a real estate transaction close and happen. So I want to cover off the biggest pitfalls that we're seeing right now and how you can avoid them. So most important, like kind of 2-3 steps, are trust monies, clearing our trust account such that we can convey and confirm and send things to either outside brokers, builders, lawyers, most commonly lawyers. The second is the mortgage has to fund. So even if you rep the seller and you want a quick closing, they want it to close in 2 weeks, you have to understand, is that feasible for the buyer, or are you contracting to create a future problem? And then third is our legal partners. And so lawyers' offices are also really busy this time of year, and they're strained as well. So let's talk about all three of those. So first and foremost, trust deposits. So we're updating one last thing on this point on the trust deposit instructions to remind people that money has to clear our account before we can verify and invoice and instruct other parties outside of our organization about the money we hold in trust. And so if it's a regular check, that can take up to 2 weeks for us, depending on which institution the money's being drawn from. If it's one of the big 5 banks, we bank with TD, it's one of those reasons. If it's TD to TD, it might be as quick as 5 to 7 days, but the money has to clear our account before we can issue any excess funds to outside brokerages or lawyers, or most importantly, before we can convey the deal. So even certified funds right now, like bank drafts or similar, are also minorly delayed more than ever before, unfortunately, due to the amount of fraud that's happening in our market and in our country right now. There's a lot of financial fraud, and so banks are having to protect against that, which means more checks and balances. Payload, as that third option, is quick. It's one of the quickest and most secure. It's also the fastest for return of deposit if deals fall apart, but there still is a timeline. So you'll get the confirmation email right away when the money's sent. It still has to be go through all the wire transfer process between institutions, and then it actually bounces to an in-between financial institution before it lands in our trust account. So it lands as wire electronic transfer, and we know it's verified, but that can take 3 to 4 banking days for that to happen. So keep that in mind, even with electronic transfers and wires. If you go wire to wire, depending on the bank, and again, depending on where the money's coming from, source of funds, dollar amount. So if it's 50 or 100K, even 20K, anything over 10 basically is FINTRAC's threshold. Keep that in mind. So don't set yourself up for failure having timelines too tight. So the second one we talked about was closing. So funding the mortgage. Most lenders, you should work with your lender partner, ask those questions of the buyer's agent if you're on the sell side, and make sure that you're leaving enough time they can actually fund. Typically, most lenders are kind of 2 to 4 weeks minimum after all conditions are removed, conditions of that loan. So not you remove conditions on the deal. We're talking about the conditions the buyer and borrower has to meet for that lender. So work closely with your mortgage partners and or your mortgage specialists and your buyer if they're not using someone that's on your kind of recommended list. Make sure the buyer's clear about those things and the impact that it can have. That deal could collapse and they could lose the house and lose their deposit if they're not able to close on the contractual closing day, and the seller wants to get out of the contract, they'll not extend. They don't have to act reasonably in those scenarios. They have to act reasonably to close on the contracted close date. So last and leads into that is the legal side. So the third step, lawyers are also busy, and so they have to make sure, and you got to work with them to know timeline. So I would have those relationships with lawyers if your client's not using someone that you regularly work with and that you recommend the 2 or 3 kind of top people for their scenario. Well, then ask them to loop you in with the lawyer and confirm in writing that they're comfortable with the closing date for their timelines. Whatever, they got to get mortgage instructions, they have to get all the paperwork done, then they have to have the client in to sign, and then they have to go back and forth with the other lawyer on the other side and verify everything's in place, including insurance, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not as simple as just the part we do is part of a chain, and we got to work as a team. So like we say all the time, we appreciate our lawyers, our lender, mortgage broker partners, and home inspectors and condo doc review. All these things are important. Timelines are tight. You're negotiating deals, but negotiate them so your client is going to have a great experience in the end, and they're going to refer you. If you negotiate a deal up front, I can anticipate often that it's going to have problems later. If you're closing on the end of the month, like the 30th, 31st, if you're closing on the 1st of the month, you're closing, on a Friday before a long weekend, or worse, you're closing on a Saturday. That's not going to happen. It'll get pushed to the following week. So set your deals up for success as you negotiate them. And I always say, anytime you're feeling pressure in the middle of negotiations, just breathe, take a breath, call broker support if need be. We'll help you navigate case by case. But the key is not feeling like rushed into anything, that you set your client up and yourself up for future headaches. How we negotiate deals up front dictates how smoothly they go down the line. So as always, comment below, ask us your questions. That's what we're here for. And have nice, smooth transactions and continue being the #1 rated brokerage in all of Canada on Rank My Agent like we got in 2024 for happy client experiences.